Hey guys, we have finished our first reading of Sideways Stories from Wayside School, and we still had another book that we didn't get to finish, and I'm not going to jump into the new Sideways Stories Under the Cloud of Doom, and I think that's what you thought I was going to do. Uh-oh, you just saw it. I'm going to restart Frindle because we didn't get a chance to finish this in class, and this book was so funny and we were really enjoying it. So I thought, what a better way to go back to the beginning and read through the chapters in this book. Frindle is an award-winning book of the Christopher Award. It is by Andrew Clements, and the pictures are by Brian Selznick. Excuse me. So, Frindle, and you probably remember some of the stuff that's going on, but remember, each time we read a story more than once, we build that comprehension in our brain, which we make a stronger, more powerful connection to the story. And so, with no further ado, we're going to start back off with Chapter 1, Nick. If you asked the kids and teachers at Lincoln Elementary School to make 3 lists, all the really bad kids, all the really smart kids, and all the really good kids, Nick Allen would not be on any of them. Nick deserved a list all his own, and everybody knew it. Was Nick a troublemaker? Hard to say. One thing's for sure, Nick Allen had plenty of ideas, and he knew what to do with them. One time, in 3rd grade, Nick decided to turn Miss Deaver's room into a tropical island. What kid in New Hampshire isn't ready for a little summer in February? So first he got everyone to make small palm trees out of green and brown construction paper and tape them onto the corners of each desk. Miss Deaver had only been a teacher for about 6 months, and she was delighted. That's so cute! The next day, all the girls wore paper flowers in their hair. All the boys wore sunglasses and beach hats. Miss Deaver clapped her hands and said, "It's so colorful." The day after that, Nick turned the classroom thermostat up to about 90 degrees with a little screwdriver he had brought from home. All the kids changed into shorts and t-shirts with no shoes, and when Miss Deaver left the room for a minute, Nick spread out about 10 cups of fine white sand all over the classroom floor. Miss Deaver was surprised again, and at just how creative her students could be. But the sand got tracked out into the hallway. Manny, the custodian, did not think it was creative at all, and he stomped right down to the office. The principal followed the trail of sand, and when she arrived, Miss Deaver was teaching the hula to some kids near the front of the room, and a tall, thin, shirtless boy with chestnut hair was spiking a Nerf volleyball over a net made from 6 t-shirts tied together. The 3rd grade trip to the South Seas suddenly ended. But that didn't stop Nick from trying to liven things up. Lincoln Elementary needed a good jolt once in a while, and Nick was just the guy to deliver it. About a year later, Nick made the great blackbird discovery. One night, he learned on TV that the red-winged blackbird gave his high-pitched chirp when a hawk or some other danger comes near. But because of the way sound travels, the hunter birds can tell where the high-pitched chirp is coming from. The next day, during silent reading, Nick glanced at his teacher, and he noticed that Mrs. Avery's nose was curved kind of like a beak of a hawk. So Nick let out a high, squeaky blackbird. Beep! Miss Avery jerked her head from the top of her book and looked around. She couldn't tell who did it, so she just said, "Shh," to the whole class. A minute later, Nick did it again, louder. Beep! This time, there was little giggles from the class, but Miss Avery pretended not to hear. And about 15 seconds later, she slowly stood up, walked to the back of the classroom. Without taking her eyes off the book and without moving at all, Nick put his heart and soul into the highest, most annoying chirp of all. Beep! Miss Avery announced, "Janet Fisk, you stop that instant!" Janet, who was sitting 4 rows away from Nick, promptly turned white and then bright crimson. But it wasn't me, honest. There was a catch in Janet's voice, as if she might cry. Miss Avery knew she had made a mistake, and she apologized to Janet. But someone is asking for big trouble, said Mrs. Avery, looking more like a hawk every second. Nick kept reading, and he didn't make a peep. At lunchtime, Nick talked to Janet. He felt so bad that Miss Avery had pounced on her. Janet lived in Nick's neighborhood, and sometimes they played together. She was good at baseball, and she was better at soccer than most kids in the whole school, boys and girls. Nick said, "Hey, Janet, I'm sorry you got yelled at during reading. It was all my fault. I was the one who made the sound." "You did?" said Janet. "But how come Miss Avery thought it was me?" So Nick told her about the blackbirds, and Janet thought it was pretty interesting. Then she tried making a peep or two, and Janet's chirps were even higher and squeakier than Nick's. She promised to keep everything a secret. For the rest of Nick's 4th grade year, at least once a week, Miss Avery heard a loud peep from somewhere in the classroom. Sometimes it was the high-pitched chirp, and sometimes it was a very high-pitched chirp. Mrs. Avery never figured out who was making the sound, and gradually she trained herself to ignore it. But she still looked like a hawk. To Nick, the whole thing was just one long and successful science experiment, and Janet Fisk enjoyed it too. So that is chapter 1 of this book. What's really cool about this version of Frindle that I have is it actually are some reading questions at the end. So at the end of each chapter, I'm going to read a question that I really want you to think about. So for chapter 1, well, I guess we're not quite there yet. All right. We're going to skip that, but in about 3 chapters, I'm going to start asking you some questions for literacy circle. So that's, if we were in class, we can ask some of these questions and think about them. So as we read the story and get a little further into it, which we had before, I'll be asking you some questions for you to think about. But for those of you who are listening to this for the first time, I hope you enjoyed this sneak preview of Frindle. I will continue to read a chapter at a time, and I hope you tune in each time and read the book. All right, I will be back tomorrow. Have a great day, guys.